Oppenheimer is a new movie directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Alden Ehrenreich, Scott Grimes, Jason Clarke, Kurt Kohler, Tony Goldwyn, John Goins, Malcolm Baer, James Darcy, Kenneth Branagh, and Harry Groner, and is the biopic drama story of the man who created the atom bomb, which is Robert Oppenheimer. Now, I was anticipating this movie quite a bit. I am a pretty big fan of Christopher Nolan. Of course, I like some of his movies better than others, but most of his movies are really good, so I was really looking forward to this one. I didn't know much about the real man, apart from he was responsible for the bombings of, well, that's up in the air, but I mean, he made the atom bomb, which was then dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and afterwards he was like ridden with guilt, said he'd become death, destroyer of worlds. This is not the way he wanted his bombs to be used, and the film does really dive into that debate, but I'll talk more about that later. But first of all, I was really impressed by this movie. I don't think it was a perfect movie, though. I do have a few problems with it that I will also dive into. But I did think this was a very well-made movie and a very good effort from Christopher Nolan. I'm not sure whether it stacks up with his absolute best or his... I wouldn't say worst, because I don't think there really is a terrible Christopher Nolan movie as of yet. I'll have to... I might discuss of how it stacks up to some of his all-time greats, to maybe his ones that people aren't as favourable about. But anyway, let's dive into the story without me saying too much in terms of spoilers. So the movie basically documents the life of Robert Oppenheimer all the way from when he was studying in Cambridge, all the way leading up to the test drop of the bomb, and also all the stuff that happened afterwards with the lawsuits that were put against them concerning Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Anyway, this movie for me at times did become very hard to follow. I did feel like I was really taking every beat of the movie and really following it quite well up until a certain point. It's because, for one thing, the movie moves extremely fast. It never slows down. It just gets faster and faster and faster. It really speeds through Oppenheimer's life. And even though it is 3 hours in length, it never feels like it slows down or catches a breath or really drags. It's a very fast-moving movie. And a lot of people will probably like this, a lot of people probably won't, because a lot of people have trouble keeping up with a movie that's this complicated and has so much to say and moves at such a fast pace. There's a lot of symbolism in this movie. There's this scene very early in the movie where Oppenheimer injects cyanide into an apple of his teacher that he probably hates for some reason, and of course, the apple can also symbolize the apple of sin. The analogy of Prometheus is talked about a couple of times in this movie, that he's the person who gave the gift of knowledge for man, and he was sent for hell because he did so. A little bit of Christian symbolism in it, but it's very, very subtle as well. And also early in the movie, he does poison the apple, but he takes it with his... He immediately feels guilty and regrets doing that, so he puts it in the bin before his teacher or anyone else can take a bite out of it. I was still a little bit confused. I think it was supposed to symbolise that there is a sort of a bit of a fire, a bit of rage inside of Oppenheimer, which was necessary to him getting that far, to conceiving and actually inventing the atomic bomb. There's also a couple of scenes in the movie where Albert Einstein does make an appearance. I keep on forgetting the name of the actor, but he was in the movie for very little, but I did very much enjoy the time that he was in. He is also, he was very different from Oppenheimer. He's also a genius, but he always wanted to use his genius for the good of mankind, and didn't really approve of Oppenheimer's plan, but he still didn't, or he wasn't invasive enough to actually get in his way and try and stop him. He still let him do what he needed to do, but he was never a fan or on Oppenheimer's side. And the relationship that they two had in the movie was very interesting, even though they both weren't in it for really that much at all. So the movie often does jump backwards and forwards in time a lot. There are several sections of the movie that are shot in black and white, which is supposed to symbolise after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. sort of like how, like in Better Call Saul, the end of it, all the black and white stuff was the stuff that took place after the events of Breaking Bad. It kind of did feel a little bit similar in that regard. Also, Robert Downey Jr. plays a really good character in this era of time. He put on a really good performance. He was very emotional. He was very direct. He was very intense in this movie, even a lot more so than he ever was as Iron Man and Tony Stark in the MCU movies. I really did like how he did make an appearance in this movie. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air for that actor, which I appreciated. Overall, but anyway, the first half of the movie is leading up to the test drop. There's a lot of things that go on in this movie, a lot of confliction, a lot of drama, a lot of tension. This movie has a crazy amount of tension in it, and it never lets up. It just gets high and high, and the movie gets faster and faster, more intense, until the test drop scene, which I thought was an incredible scene. It was an amazing scene. One thing that I realised from this movie is that Christopher Nolan was not actually allowed to film a real atomic hydrogen bomb detonating, even though I really do think that he wanted to. But a friend pointed out to me that it wasn't an actual nuclear bomb that went off. It was just a crazy amount of TNT that blew up that was made to look like the detonation of an atomic bomb. So it's close enough, I guess. It's not a real atomic bomb, but like, you know, nobody really wants to detonate those things anymore. They are very, very evil inventions, and I have a feeling that I think the world has kind of grown, it's had enough with them, because I know a lot of them have been detonated over the ocean. I think 50 to 100 atomic bombs have been blown up over the ocean since about 1945. I don't know whether any more real ones are being blown up anymore. It's probably a really good thing that they're not, because they are really evil weapons, which the film does really shove down your throat towards the end of this movie. So I think the problems that I had with this movie is definitely towards the end after the test drop, because up until the test drop scene, I was following the movie pretty well. I mean, I was trying with all of my brain power to keep up with this movie, because it was like all the time I was trying to catch a rabbit in a lot of ways. I never felt like I was one step ahead of the movie. The movie always felt one step ahead of me. But after the test drop sequence and after all these lawsuits that Oppenheimer faces, this is where the movie just kind of lost me. It really did outpace me, because it became very confusing. There was so much going on, so much conversation between all these different characters, between different time periods. And I think in a way it was kind of trying to confuse you, because you know deep down what the dilemma is here, and you didn't really need it to be overcomplicated for you, because towards the end it does become very simplified for you of what Oppenheimer's reason was for all of his guilt. I won't spoil any more of the movie. I feel like I've talked about enough, but this was the main problem I had with the movie. The final act was just very, very intense, and it did lose me, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. I don't think that was Christopher Nolan's fault. I mean, like, I know his movies are extremely intellectual, and he doesn't really hold back with making something that's very intense and very complicated. As I said in my Tenet review 3 years ago, I had a very hard time following that movie. And this is somebody who understood Inception pretty well, The Matrix pretty well, even though that wasn't a Nolan movie. Tenet was kind of exceeding my limit of what I could understand from film. Though I was entertained by the movie, I just didn't really understand certain parts of it. And even though Oppenheimer is not like Tenet, it's more just a biopic, the final act was still very hard for me to follow. But overall, I did actually have a very good time watching this movie. I loved the music. It was very tense. It was very loud, which is what I expected. I still really don't know where this movie stacks up in my personal favourite Nolan films. For me, I have 4 favourite Christopher Nolan movies, and that is The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, and Interstellar. And I don't really think this movie is up on that level. It is still very good, but I think this is kind of more like in the realm of maybe Tenet and Dunkirk, maybe Memento. I've only seen Memento once and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't up at the top. But at the same time, not a bad movie. Definitely, it's a very, very, very good movie. Though I don't think it is in terms of like the Nolan masterpiece, like from Inception and The Dark Knight and, you know, Prestige. But overall, it's definitely worth watching. It is a very good movie. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I did have a few problems with it. I don't think it was perfect, but I do think it was executed very, very well, and it's definitely worth your time seeing. If you're a fan of Christopher Nolan, definitely see it. If you are interested in the story of Oppenheimer, definitely see it. As I said, I don't think it is quite a masterpiece, but it is definitely a very solid and very watchable movie, and it's definitely not bad in any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, that's my opinion of Oppenheimer. I do recommend that you go see it. As always, thank you everyone for watching and supporting this channel. You guys are awesome. And as always, take care. Thank you.